Bingo knows she's inside a cartoon, and the Bluey show might actually exist inside the Blue Pup's own universe. There have already been several fourth wall breaks like this in Bluey. In the episode where Bingo plays by herself, she looks right in our direction and talks directly to us. This happens when the little girl tries to play a game where someone has to figure out which object she's thinking about, but Bingo realizes she can't play that game by herself. That's when she stares right at everyone watching the episode and says that the correct answer to win the game was the rug. And then Bingo goes right back to acting normally, as if she hadn't just revealed that she knows we're watching her. And as shocking as that was, this is only one of the 17 times someone in Bluey broke the fourth wall and you didn't even notice. Are you ready? Because another amazing Cinewave is starting now. At the end of Puppets, the fourth wall break is even more bizarre because it practically confirms that the world of Bluey is nothing more than an illusion. After Bluey falls asleep, we see that she and her bedroom are actually inside a screen. Wait, look at this. That's a human hand. It's doing the entire animation process for the next scene, where Bluey wakes up, which means that hand represents one of the many animators who work on the show. But this isn't just a little joke. When Bluey wakes up, she says that she had a very strange dream. In other words, the little pup saw everything that happened. It couldn't have been just a dream because a human hand appeared, and everyone in this cartoon's universe is an animal. It would be impossible for her to imagine a type of hand she had never seen before in her life. In other words, everything suggests that the Bluey universe is canonically controlled by animators, even within the story of the cartoon itself. So much so that in Daddy Drop-Off, Lila talks to us like we're right there with her, almost as if she's telling us a story. This is one of the few times a character in the show speaks directly to us, while the fourth wall breaks made by other characters are much more subtle. Another case like this was Bingo's, which we talked about at the beginning, and that's interesting because Lila meets Bluey's sister in this episode, and the two become best friends from that moment on. Could their friendship have grown so strong precisely because both Bingo and Lila know that they're inside a cartoon? In fact, sometimes it even seems like the Bluey show actually exists inside its own universe, almost as if the characters were just actors starring in a television show. In Kids, Bluey and Bingo are at a store with Bandit and walk past some toys. Zoom in right here. The Healer family's house is pictured on this box. In other words, there's a toy version of Bluey's house being sold inside the very world where she lives. That suggests that she and her family could actually be celebrities from a television series. In The Quiet Game, there's another clue suggesting that the members of the Healer family are famous actors, and all you have to do is zoom in on this scene to understand why. We can see a book with a blue puppy on the cover who looks identical to Bluey. And this isn't just a coincidence, because the image on that cover is identical to a scene from the episode Fruit Bat, where Bluey flies alongside bats inside a dream. In fact, that episode was turned into a real book in the real world. So this really is the same book that appeared in the episode. That could only be possible if the Bluey series also exists inside Bluey's own universe. Maybe we could come up with another excuse for the toy house, but this book is pretty much impossible to explain. Speaking of that, there are times when a character feels such an unbelievable amount of secondhand embarrassment that instead of saying anything, they just break the fourth wall. In the episode Grannies, Bingo pretends to be an old lady, slips on a can of beans, and for some reason, this makes both her and Bluey laugh uncontrollably. Zoom in on Chili's face. She was so confused by what was happening that she simply looked straight at us, almost as if she wanted to say something like, "Don't even ask, I have no idea what goes on inside my daughter's heads." Do you also think some Bluey characters actually know that we exist and that we're watching them? If so, comment #bingo down below, because she's definitely the one most likely to know the truth. The same thing happened to Mackenzie during Shops. At one point, Bluey, Chloe, and Honey started pretending to be kittens and meowing at the same time. Let's zoom in on his face. Poor guy, he started looking at us like he was begging for help. Mackenzie got so uncomfortable from the secondhand embarrassment that it's impossible not to feel bad for him. Can someone please get him away from those girls before he completely loses it? Even though both Chili and Mackenzie broke the fourth wall, we don't think they know they're inside a cartoon the way Bingo and Lila do. Since Mackenzie and Chili's fourth wall breaks were much more subtle, we think they did it without even realizing it, almost as if the secondhand embarrassment they felt made them notice for a few seconds that something wasn't quite right. That wasn't the only time Mackenzie broke the fourth wall. In fact, we see it happen again in the creek when he tries to encourage Bluey to jump from one rock to another by saying it's like jumping from one sheep to another. This is a reference to the fact that Mackenzie is a border collie. In real life, border collies are commonly used to herd sheep, and sometimes they even jump from one sheep to another while trying to keep the flock together. But the dogs in the Bluey universe act like humans, so the little blue pup says that they don't jump on sheep. That leaves Mackenzie surprised, and that's when he looks right in our direction. Look at his little eyes. It almost seems like Mackenzie is asking the audience whether Bluey is actually telling the truth. There are also some fourth wall breaks that are a little more subtle, like in the episode Flat Pack, when Bandit and Chili are putting together a swing that came with instructions featuring a cartoon dog. That's when Bandit says he's not going to take advice from a cartoon dog, which couldn't be more ironic, considering he is literally a cartoon dog himself. He ended up breaking the fourth wall without even realizing it. Another time something like this happened in a more subtle way was in Spy Game, when Bingo is using the bathroom at the park and starts singing "One Man Went to Mow." The strange thing is that the song mentions dogs in its lyrics while referring to them as something different from men, which suggests that human beings might also exist in the Bluey universe. Otherwise, the song would have to have completely different lyrics, removing the men and mentioning only dogs. Then again, we already talked about the idea that Bingo knows she's inside a cartoon, so it's possible that she simply knows the song from the real world. The fourth wall break in the episode Driving is one of the funniest because it happens while Bluey and Chili are pretending to buy milk. When Chili points at the imaginary clerk in their game, she's actually pointing directly at us, and then Bluey simply throws milk right in our face. Is this really how Australia's most beloved little pup treats her fans? Wow, talk about disrespect.
And Muffin happens to be one of the characters who disrespects other people the most, and she was the reason behind the next fourth wall break, even though it had nothing to do with her bad manners. In the sleepover, Muffin is acting weird because she didn't take her afternoon nap, and then she suddenly says that she's a llama. And obviously that leaves Bluey confused. So confused that she simply looks at us, almost as if she's wondering whether Muffin really just said she was a llama. It's another one of those cases where something so strange happens that someone suddenly realizes, just for a moment, that they're inside a show and breaks the fourth wall.
Subscribing to the channel is just as good as watching your favorite animations. Shall we click? What's interesting is that the next fourth wall break is also related to sleep. In Sleepy Time, Bandit is extremely tired and finds Bingo sleeping in his bed, even though he had just taken her out of there. He was so exhausted that he simply looked at us and sighed. Just like in Mackenzie's case, this seemed more like a cry for help than anything else. But sometimes, instead of Bluey invading the real world, it's the real world that invades Bluey. We see this in several episodes, like in Takeaway, where a real-life restaurant appears. Look at the name of the restaurant. It's called Golden Crown. Now take a look at the name of this real restaurant. It's also called Golden Crown. This is a Chinese restaurant that actually exists in the city of Brisbane. Since Bluey and her family live in Brisbane, Australia, she ends up passing by these kinds of real-life places every once in a while. Of course, the show could just create completely fictional locations, but it's much more fun to show places that actually exist in Brisbane. Another time we saw a real place from the city was in Curry Quest, when Bandit has to travel by plane for work. The thing is, the airport he goes through actually exists and is known as Brisbane International Airport. It's funny that so many families have decided to visit this city because of Bluey, considering that many of those same families pass through the exact airport that has already appeared in the show. Even the park that appears in the episode Shadowlands is real. Anyone watching the episode probably wouldn't even realize that it's actually Kalinga Park, which is considered a historic heritage site in Brisbane. That's impressive, but the next place we're going to talk about is the most shocking one of all, because it's a real-life place that appeared in Bluey, but its appearance in the show ended up completely changing it in the real world. We're talking about Bunnings Warehouse, a home improvement and hardware store. In Bluey, the store appears under a different name, Hammer Barn. Even though it's called something different, it's easy to see that the two stores are practically the same because they look almost identical. What removes any doubt is that for a while, Bunnings Warehouse partnered with Ludo Studios studios for a marketing campaign and turned into an exact replica of Hammer Barn. In other words, just like we said, Bluey affected the real world, making an ordinary store that inspired the series turn into the exact fictional store that was originally based on it.
If you liked this video, there are 2 more ready on the screen. Just click and keep watching with us. Thanks, and see you soon.